Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Green Wave of Tulane, who finished last season with an impressive 11-3 record and made an appearance in the Military Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 20th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is the beat reporter for the Times-Picayune, New Orleans Advocate. He is the publisher of thewavereport.com for rivals. He is Guerry Smith. Guerry can be found at Guer Smith on X. Welcome to the show, Guerry.
Thanks for having me on the show.
As we mentioned earlier, Tulane had a very impressive season in 2023 and in 2022 for that matter. But with that success, change has come. They lost their AAC Coach of the Year, Willie Fritz, and virtually all the coaching staff to Houston. This offseason, they hired John Summerall, who was previously the head coach at Troy. What can you tell us about Coach Summerall and what he brings to the table for the Green Wave?
I mean, well, it's pretty remarkable, actually, that Willie Fritz won 23 games in the last 2 years and a conference title and made a conference title championship game appearance when they lost to SMU last year. Let's see, what did John Summerall do the last year? Oh yeah, he made 2 conference championship game appearances, won 23 games. The only difference is he won both of his in the Sun Belt. It's an example of how Willie Fritz elevated the program, because John Summerall is considered one of the up and coming coaches in the country, and he had been at Tulane as an assistant coach under Willie Fritz's predecessor, and there's no way he comes back to Tulane if Willie Fritz hadn't done done to the program, what he did the last 2 years. But in the past, every time Tulane had a successful coach and he left, the program went down. It's not going to go down this time with John Summerall. I mean, his credentials are impeccable, and he even knows how to recruit at Tulane, because he was one of their lead recruiters as co-defensive coordinator when he was on the staff before.
So as it often happens when you get a new head coach, that means new assistants and coordinators. Tulane is no different in that regard. Coach Summerall brings over Joe Craddock with him over from Troy, where he served as the OC over there. Can you describe the type of offense that Coach Craddock brings with him and plans to run there at Tulane?
Yeah, I can't totally describe it, because coaches always say this stuff, but he talks about how he coaches to the talent of his players, that he's not he's not wedded to one system. But if you check what he's done, that's kind of true. He's got his career started. He was the youngest offensive coordinator in America at SMU. He went undefeated against Tulane at SMU when he was offensive coordinator. But it's a balanced, diverse offense. They use the tight ends heavily. Tulane had some good tight ends already. And so I would be surprised if he doesn't continue that with the personnel he's inheriting. But it's kind of a physical, it's a run first offense, but it's in college these days. You can't just rely on that. It's balanced, but really he does coach to his personnel. And the best player he's inheriting on Tulane is Mekhi Hughes, their running back, who had an absolutely outstanding breakthrough season last year. It's funny, Tulane fans haven't totally warmed up to him, because he's not Tyjae Spears, who was absolutely transcendent. He doesn't have Tyjae Spears' breakaway ability, but he has everything else. He picks holes perfectly. So, I mean, he's a 1,500-yard back if the offensive line blocks for him effectively this year. So I don't really think there are going to be a ton of changes from what Tulane had last year, but he has a bigger track record of success than Willie Fritz's offensive coordinators do. So I think Tulane fans have a lot to be excited for with Craddock.
All right, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that is the quarterback. They lose a good one in AAC Offensive Player of the Year, Michael Pratt, to a different type of green. He is now with the Green Bay Packers. He ended his career as the top 10 in a lot of statistical categories. But let's shift over to the guys that are in this room. Kai Horton briefly entered the portal but came back. Justin Ibieta returns to the room, and then they grabbed Ty Thompson from the transfer portal. He was at Oregon previously. What can you tell us about this room and how things went this spring?
Yeah, well, first let's for this year, let's cross out Justin Ibieta, because he broke his leg in a horrible way in the bowl game. it's not clear whether he's ever going to be able to play again. He's still on the team, but he may end up accepting a medical disqualification where he stays in school on scholarship. Regardless, he isn't going to be playing this year. But Ty Thompson's another example of John Sumrall's magic as a recruiter, because Willie Fritz wasn't getting a guy like Ty Thompson to come in when he was coaching. Ty Thompson was one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country coming out of high school. Went to Oregon for 3 years, didn't play much. He was obviously behind some really good quarterbacks, and he saw the writing on the wall when the job was supposed to be, could have been his going into this year, and they immediately took 2 grad transfer quarterbacks in. So he entered the transfer portal. He's not a guy Tulane would have even been in the mix for in the past. Having said that, Kai Horton came back. Kai Horton, he's had some experience in the past. He was a very lightly recruited quarterback when he came to Tulane, but he can make all the throws. He's got a ton of ability. His issue has been focus, consistency during games. And in spring, there wasn't a whole lot of different. Ty Thompson was coming off an ankle injury. He missed the first week and a half of spring practice. He was limited the next week, but then he was full go the rest of spring. And right now officially it's a truly open competition. And I do believe they have not made any decisions, but the reality is they didn't bring a former 5-star high school quarterback, Ty Thompson, in to ride the bench at the beginning of the year. So I'll be pretty surprised if at the beginning of the year Ty Thompson isn't the starting quarterback. But Kai Horton's good enough that Ty Thompson's going to have to perform when he gets in there at the beginning of the year. I think it's going to be an open comp. He's going to be the starter, even though they're not going to announce it until pretty soon before the start of the season. But it's not going to be he's going to have to prove that he can keep the job, because Kai Horton, he's underrated. He really can make all the throws. He just they just, both Willie Fritz and now this staff has just been hammering on him that you can't lose focus. You got to play every play the same. And if he does that, he's got a lot of talent.
You mentioned, and we talked about Kai Horton, briefly entering the portal and then deciding to come back to Tulane. Can you tell us anything about, that decision and what kind of led him to say, hey, this is where I want to be. I want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, I think when he went in the portal, he didn't know who the head coach was going to be. And he had a ball. Tulane did not play well at all in the bowl game against Virginia Tech in the Military Bowl, but Kai Horton played pretty well, and he had fun. He knew, he saw what it could be if he could be the starting quarterback at Tulane. He in the third quarter against Virginia Tech, he ran in for a touchdown to tie the game, and he was celebrating. You could tell then there was no way he was leaving at that point, because he was still in the portal and playing in the game. But he was so invested and involved in that game. And he truly believes he can be the quarterback this year. He knew he was never going to be the starting quarterback with Michael Pratt around. But he believes he can be the guy. He's had a great experience at Tulane to this point. And that's why he stayed. I mean, I think the second they hired John Sumrall, and then Kai Horton got a chance to play that whole bowl game, there was no way he was leaving at that point.
So, you mentioned that you felt like Ty Thompson probably is going to be the winner of the job, but Kai Horton is certainly, a capable quarterback as well. How long do you think that leash might be for Ty Thompson if he struggles early in the season?
Well, because of the schedule, not that long. And Tulane's second game of the year, they host Kansas State in a rematch of the game that was the official start of the turnaround of the program, because 2 years ago, Tulane went to Kansas State. Willie Fritz had never beaten a Power 5 opponent in any step of his coaching career. Nobody knew how good Kansas State was going to be that year at the time. In fact, the game was on ESPN Plus. It wasn't even on a network. Tulane won that game, even though Tyjae Spears was injured and was basically used as a decoy in that game. And then Kansas State went on and won the Big 12, but Tulane gained so much confidence from that win. It carried them through their championship season. But anyway, Tulane, they have Kansas State in their second game, and then they go to Norman to play Oklahoma in week 3. So they're going to need really good quarterback play to have a chance in both of those games. And I think we'll know a lot more about who the quarterback is going to be after those 2 games back to back.
Let's move over to the running game. This room is highlighted by the return of the AAC. I don't know if you call it Rookie of the Year, the Freshman of the Year. I believe I saw it was Rookie of the Year, Mekhi Hughes. This room has some depth to it. They brought back Shady Clayton-Johnson and Arnold Barnes. Arnold Barnes had a lot of hype going into last year as a as a freshman. This room did lose Iverson Celestine.
Yeah.
He transferred to South Alabama after the spring game. How did the running back room look this spring?
It's deep, it's good, and it's not going to matter how deep it is if Micah stays healthy, because he's just got that. You can tell the difference. He's just got that knack. To me, the most important thing about any running back is being able to pick that hole, and he's got that perfect instinct for how to find the hole, even if there's hardly one there, and then get through that hole. And he excels at it. Willie Fritz was a great coach. He had a great staff, but they committed coaching malpractice last year with Micah Hughes at the beginning of the year, because it wasn't until week 5 that he started. And what happened was in their opener against South Alabama, he missed a blitz pickup, and Michael Pratt got crushed and fumbled the ball. And coaches, they're obsessed about that. If you're not, they start worrying about that stuff. So for the next 4 weeks, Micah Hughes was clearly the best. Every time he came in the game changed. And it wasn't until the conference started that they ended up starting him. And then he had 6, 7 100-yard games in a row. He's the real deal. But you mentioned Arnold Barnes. He came in as a high school student last year. Came in early in the spring. He's tough. He's physical. The only thing is he's the same type of runner as Micah Hughes. Sometimes you want to have a different runner as your backup. They're the same type player. But he showed tremendous improvement in the spring. He wasn't really ready last year in the fall. He was a little too young. And you mentioned Shotty Clayton-Johnson. At the end of last year, they were using him a lot as a receiver, and he does bring a different dimension. He was a huge recruit coming out of New Orleans in high school, went to Colorado. He has not lived up to that, but he's a really good player. It's a deep room. And again, Micah Hughes, he could be conference player of the year this year after being the rookie of the year last year.
Now, you've kind of alluded to it, but I want to hear it. This staff did work with 6th-round NFL draft pick Keami Vidal last year. They used him as a workhorse in 2023, much like Vidal. Hughes was used as that workhorse there, as you said, at the back half of that season. Do you expect him to split carries? Do you expect him to be that workhorse?
Yeah, I think he'll be a workhorse if he's healthy, just because as good as these other running backs are good, but he's better. I'm a firm believer. It was funny. Willie Fritz used to always say that the days of running backs getting a lot of carries were over until Tyjae Spears is exploded. And then never heard that again after that. Tyjae Spears was getting the ball. I mean, in the Cotton Bowl, he got the ball 30 times against USC. I think that's going to be the approach. Micah Hughes is durable. You don't, running backs only can take so many carries before they get nicked up, but I definitely think Micah Hughes is going to be used the exact same way, and will be a workhorse back for this team.
All right, let's move over to the wide receiver room. Standout freshman from a year ago, Chris Brazil transfers to Tennessee. Lawrence Keys III and Jaquan Jackson are gone. I think Jaquan Jackson is now a Tennessee Titan, and they were the number 2 and 3 guys. That means the leading receiver in this room in terms of yards from last year is Joel Keith Brown, who had 391 yards and 2 touchdowns. But they do bring in some transfers via the portal. They brought in Kai Preen from LSU, who didn't arrive until after spring practice. Shaz Preston from Alabama, Mario Williams from USC, and Therese Trainer from Idaho. How did the wide receiver room shape up during the spring?
Yeah, it's more talented than last year's group. But you made a good point. Well, first of all, Chris Brazel's a big loss. He was a terrific player. That's why he's at Tennessee. Now that he would have been gone even if Willie Fritz's staff had stayed. He's a big timer. But again, they brought in Mario Williams. This is another guy that Tulane wouldn't even been in the mix for in the past. This is a guy. He went to Oklahoma, transferred to USC with the coach, and was absolutely tremendous 2 years ago. Struggled a little bit last year, but he's a big timer. He's an NFL caliber receiver. And basically after the first 4 days of spring, they sort of shut him down in terms of they already knew he was going to be the number 1 receiver on the team and had him kind of coach up the other receivers. You mentioned Joel Keith Brown. Joel Keith Brown was another tremendously high-rated recruit coming out of high school, went to Texas A&M, didn't do a whole lot there, had a very slow start last year, really came on in the second half of the year. He's terrific it's a different system now, but trust me, they'll incorporate him. He's great at those little end-around jet sweeps. That became his staple play. He's a difference maker on those. bunch of other transfers. Shaz Preston was another huge recruit coming in high school. Now, he's a work in progress because he went to Alabama. Granted, it was Alabama, but he didn't play at all at receiver in 2 years there. So obviously they didn't feel like he was polished yet. But again, a different caliber athlete than Tulane used to have at wide receiver. So I think this crew could be better than last year's, but it has to be proven on the field. Kai Preen had a great touchdown catch in the spring game at LSU. These guys are faster and more talented than Tulane's receivers ever were under Willie Fritz, but they do have to prove it on the field. Other than Mario Williams, they have to prove it on the field. But I have a pretty good feeling that they're going to do it this year.
So I'm assuming that Mario Williams is going to play in the slot. Who do you think the two outside guys are going to be?
Yeah, Yokeith Brown and Shaz Preston if he starts. And the other guy you mentioned, he left after spring. The guy from Idaho. Yeah, but he left because they told him. I mean, he just didn't do much. They had him and a guy from UCF that transferred in. It's the new thing, these tryouts, where guys come in for spring practice and then they're gone right after it. But that was the case. They didn't move up. They were kind of told they were not starters in the spring, and I think they decided that Tulane wasn't the right fit for them because they might not get a lot of playing time this year.
Sure.
Well, let's move over to the tight ends. You described earlier that, hey, these tight ends are going to be utilized heavily. Can you describe that a little bit more of what you saw there in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't see a whole lot in the spring because they had a lot of injuries at the position. But I went into the history and Troy used their tight end quite a bit, and Tulane has a bunch of good ones. Okay, I'm having a moment here. I'm blanking out on Tulane's starting tight end's name.
Alex Bowman. Reggie Brown.
Sorry about that. Alex Bowman. He also had entered the transfer portal when Willie Fritz left, and the second he did the research on this coaching staff and what they do, and he came back to Tulane out of the transfer portal. He can be a big time player. Of course, his big moment was he caught the winning touchdown against USC in the Cotton Bowl, right on the ground in the final seconds to win that game, after also making a big play earlier in the drive on a 3rd and 10 situation. He was nicked up last year, so he didn't have great stats, but he's a guy that he could catch 40 passes and be a huge factor at tight end, and they really like him a lot. And they've got about 3 or 4 other guys that are in the mix that can play some too, but I think Alex Bauman's going to have. I had predicted last year that he was going to lead the team to catches. That didn't look so good by the end of the year, but they actually, their offense really, it was. For all the talent they had last year, their offense, for whatever reason, really struggled for most of last year until they had to make a play in crucial situations. They had so many close games. They really did have a hangover effect from winning the conference championship and having everybody going after them. One game after the other, they could have lost in the regular season in the conference, and they managed to win them all. But Alex Bowman didn't have the year I thought he would last year, but I think he'll have what I thought was going to happen last year. I think he's going to have this year.
Can you describe for our listeners a little bit more about like what Reggie Brown does? Is he more of a pass catcher, run blocker? And then they brought in Anthony Miller from Indiana. And is he like a pass catcher, run blocker?
He did. Anthony Miller didn't do a whole lot at Indiana. Obviously, they believe in him. They think he's going to be good. Reggie Brown, he looked pretty good in the spring. He was one of the guys that was injured for a good portion of the spring. But yeah, he's got a lot of he's one of those guys. He can get down the field he's one of those guys who can catch those seam routes and get 20, 30 yards, not just a possession tight end type guy. He's got a little bit more speed than Bauman does. I think he's probably going to be tight end number 2. But again, they've got about 4 or 5 guys, and we'll see how that all works out.
So considering the coaching changes, kind of interesting to see Tulane didn't get hit hard by the portal at the offensive line. They do lose 2 AAC first team all conference players in Sincere Hainsworth and Cameron Wire to graduation. They played center and left tackle respectively, but they bring back right tackle Rashad Green, left guard Shadre Hurst, and right guard Josh Rimitic. And then they bring in some transfers too. What can you tell us about this unit in the spring, and are they ready to roll in this new offense?
I think so. The offensive line was one of those areas. It wasn't great last year. They were up and down, and Michael Pratt got hit hard a lot early in the year. He ended up with he got injured because on a play where he scrambled in the fourth quarter against South Alabama with a big lead and got his knee hurt, and it actually affected his knee the whole rest of the year. And that wasn't on the offensive line. But I think they made a key move. They want to win a conference championship this year, and after spring drills, John Summerall knew they had to get a left tackle. They really didn't have a left tackle, a clear starting left tackle on the roster, and then the guy they had lining up all spring at first string, Trey Tuggle, tore his ACL or a significant knee injury in the last week of spring drills, so he probably won't even be able to play this year. They found a guy they're pretty sure can do the job. They got Derek Graham, who was their starting left tackle at Troy last year, and he brings a different level of athleticism than Tulane's seen at that position before, because his last significant play was catching a touchdown pass in the bowl game against Duke, where he had to make an athletic catch on a poor pass. Again, he was at Texas A&M in the spring, apparently just a tryout. He entered the portal and Tulane grabbed him, and I think he's gonna be an upgrade at the position. They already know what he can do. He had an excellent year at Troy, and that was one of they had two huge needs at the end of spring drills three actually that they knew they had to address to be a championship team. One was left offensive tackle. They got Derek Graham. Two was rush in. We'll get to that in a minute. The edge rusher, and then three, they had to get a kicker because they didn't have one, and they addressed all three needs. I mean, they've got 12 transfers since the end of spring practice from the portal, and they had 10 come in before. I think they were rated as the second best group of 5 conference transfer class behind Memphis by one group and barely behind Memphis. This is the best transfer class Tulane's ever had, and other than some guys that left for Houston and Chris Brazel went to Tennessee, they didn't lose a whole lot in the transfer portal. This is going to be the most talented roster Tulane's had in ages. Much less experience though than last year, so we'll have to see how it gels as the year goes on.
They brought in Vince Murphy. Yeah. From Western Kentucky. Is he going to be the starting center this year?
He's going to be the starting center. And that was he played all spring. I'm not sure he's at the same level as Derek Graham, but he's a solid starter. They were happy with him in the spring. The one position that they had to fill was left tackle, and they did that. Now I'm not sure. I don't know if they're not that deep on the offensive line, so they're going to need to stay healthy up front. But if they stay healthy up front, I think they're going to have their best offensive line in several years too.
All right, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
Well, I already mentioned Alex Bauman, but I picked him last year, and that didn't work out too well. I mean, breakout. I think Mario Williams is going to have an unbelievable year at Tulane. He's already proven himself. Now he dropped a lot of passes at USC last year, but there was something dysfunctional going on at USC entirely last year. He showed no signs of that in the spring. And he's also, you sometimes wonder if a guy comes from USC to Tulane, is he going to be about himself? Is he going to feel like he's bigger than the program? He was none of that at all. In fact, he was helping coach the other guys. I think he's going to have a tremendous year. I think he might have numbers similar to what Chris Brazel did last year. Yeah, and obviously Mekhi Hughes, he can't have a breakout year because he already broke out last year.
He can have even bigger year, right? So I mean, in a sense, I guess he can, right?
Yeah.
Especially like you said, potential for conference player of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think if he stays healthy, I think he could get 1,500 yards this year. So I guess, that's breakout.
If you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.